Michael adjusted his tie in the mirror, his movements precise yet distracted. Amanda had been acting strange lately. Late returns from errands, vague answers to his questions, and a guarded expression that replaced her once open smile. He couldn't shake the gnawing feeling in his gut that something wasn't right. For weeks, he tried to dismiss it, convincing himself it was just stress or paranoia. But tonight, his instincts refused to be ignored. Amanda breezed through the living room, her blonde hair cascading down her shoulders in a meticulous wave. She was dressed impeccably as always, this time in a chic gray blazer and fitted jeans, an outfit that screamed casual, yet curated. "I'll be back in a couple of hours," she called over her shoulder, her voice light but her eyes avoiding his. Michael responded with a simple, "Okay?" But his mind was already racing. This wasn't the first time Amanda had gone out claiming to run errands late into the evening. And it wasn't the first time she hadn't returned with anything substantial to show for her trips. Tonight, however, Michael had decided he wouldn't let his questions go unanswered. As the door clicked shut, Michael sprang into action. He grabbed his jacket, slipped his phone into his pocket, and peered out the window. Amanda's car had just turned the corner. He quickly followed, ensuring he left enough distance to remain unnoticed. His heartbeat quickened as he tailed her through the quiet suburban streets. The route was anything but typical. Amanda veered off from the usual path to the grocery store, taking a series of unfamiliar turns that led to the city's upscale neighborhood. Michael tightened his grip on the steering wheel, the knot in his stomach growing tighter with every mile. When Amanda finally pulled into the parking lot of an apartment complex, Michael parked discreetly down the street, his mind buzzing with possibilities. He watched as she stepped out of the car, glanced around briefly, and entered the building without hesitation. "Just who lives here?" Michael whispered to himself, his breath fogging up the windshield. His hands trembled as he unlocked his phone and opened the camera app. He snapped a photo of Amanda walking into the building, his jaw tightening as the reality began to solidify. She wasn't here for errands. Michael waited, his gaze locked on the building's entrance. 15 agonizing minutes passed before Amanda reappeared. This time, she was accompanied by a man, a tall, ruggedly handsome figure with a confident gait. They were laughing, their familiarity evident. Michael quickly snapped more photos, his heart hammering in his chest. The man, James, led Amanda to his car. They lingered near the passenger side door, their conversation punctuated by shared smiles and a touch that lingered far too long for Michael's comfort. He watched as James leaned in closer, his hand brushing against Amanda's shoulder. Michael's vision blurred with fury. He wanted to confront them right then and there, but he held back. He needed undeniable proof, not just for himself, but to corner Amanda with the truth later. As the car pulled out of the lot, Michael followed at a safe distance. James's apartment was their next stop. Michael parked across the street, keeping an eye on the dimly lit window of the apartment where Amanda and James disappeared. His phone buzzed, a calendar reminder about an overdue work task. It felt trivial now, a distant echo of his normal life that seemed to crumble with every passing moment. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what came next. Whatever was happening, he wasn't leaving this street without the answers he deserved. Michael waited in his car, the dashboard clock marking the slow passage of time with an unsettling rhythm. The light from James's apartment flickered faintly, confirming they were still inside. The evidence Michael had captured on his phone was damning enough, but he couldn't leave. Not yet. He needed to see this through, to confront the betrayal that had wormed its way into his life. His thoughts swirled with memories of Amanda, her laughter that once brightened their home, her warmth that felt like a sanctuary. He tried to reconcile the woman he had built his life with and the one who was now entangled in another man's arms. The chasm between those two realities was unbearable. 40 minutes passed before Amanda re-emerged. Michael straightened in his seat, his breath catching as she stepped out of the building. Her expression was relaxed, her movements unhurried, as though nothing was amiss. James followed close behind, leaning against the doorframe as Amanda turned back to say something. Whatever she said made him laugh, and then they exchanged a brief, intimate kiss. Michael clenched the steering wheel, his knuckles white. This was no misunderstanding, no innocent meeting. It was a betrayal, stark and irrefutable. He snapped another photo of the exchange, then carefully exited his car. He didn't want to confront them here. This wasn't the place for it. He needed a moment where Amanda couldn't retreat into lies or excuses, a setting where the truth would be unavoidable. Tonight, he would gather every last shred of proof he needed to it. Back at home, Michael paced the living room, the tension in his chest growing unbearable. Amanda had texted earlier, a breezy message about running late because of unexpected delays. The sheer audacity of her deceit sent a cold wave of anger through him. He opened his phone and reviewed the photos again, each one a painful dagger of truth. When Amanda finally arrived, her keys jingling in the lock, Michael forced himself to remain calm. He wouldn't let his emotions cloud the moment. She stepped into the house, her polished demeanor intact, as if she hadn't just shattered the foundation of their life together. "Hey," Amanda greeted, placing a shopping bag on the counter. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was insane." Michael studied her, his expression unreadable. "Is that so?" he said, his voice measured. Amanda hesitated, her eyes briefly meeting his before darting away. Yeah. I tried calling, but my phone died. Anyway, I got everything for tomorrow's dinner party." Michael let her words hang in the air for a moment before speaking again. "I saw you." Amanda froze, her hand halfway to the bag. "I followed you," he said, his voice firm but steady, "to James's apartment. I saw everything." Her face drained of color, her carefully crafted facade shattering in an instant. "Michael, it's not what you think," she stammered, her voice trembling. "James is just... he's a friend. I can explain." Michael cut her off, his tone sharp. He pulled out his phone and held it up, showing her the photos. "You've been lying to me for months. No more excuses." Amanda's lips parted as if to argue, but she faltered. She stared at the photos, her shoulders slumping under the weight of undeniable proof. "Michael, please. I didn't mean for this to happen." Michael's jaw tightened, his eyes blazing with controlled fury. "Didn't mean for what to happen, Amanda. The lies, the affair, the humiliation. You've been sneaking around behind my back and you expect me to believe this was an accident?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but Michael couldn't tell if they were born of guilt or self-pity. "It's not that simple," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't want to hurt you." Michael laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "You didn't want to hurt me. Amanda, you've been systematically tearing our marriage apart with every lie, every betrayal. You had choices, and you chose this." Amanda reached for him, but Michael stepped back, the distance between them more than just physical. "Michael, I love you. I made a mistake, but I still love you. Can't we work through this?" Michael's voice turned cold. "Love doesn't look like this, Amanda. Love isn't deception. Love doesn't lead you to someone else's apartment while I sit at home wondering why you're so distant." The silence that followed was suffocating, the weight of their shattered bond pressing down on them. Michael turned away, his resolve hardening. "We're done," he said, his voice steady but laced with finality. "You've made your choices, and now I'm making mine." Amanda began to sob, but Michael didn't look back. He walked out of the room, leaving her to face the emptiness of her actions alone. Upstairs, he packed a bag, his mind already planning the next steps. Tonight had been the end of one chapter, but it was also the beginning of something new, something free from lies and betrayal. Michael stood by the edge of the park's fountain, the cold stone biting into his palms as he leaned forward, watching the water ripple under the mid-morning sun. This was it, the place he had chosen for the confrontation. A location public enough to ensure honesty, but intimate enough to make Amanda squirm under the weight of her lies. He had texted her that morning with a simple request. "Meet me at the park. We need to talk." She had replied quickly, a hint of concern in her words. "What's wrong? Can we talk at home?" "No, the park." Now, as the minutes dragged on, Michael's mind replayed the events of the previous night in sharp detail. Her feeble attempts at excuses, the hollow tears, and the pitiful insistence that she still loved him. It was a performance, one designed to buy her time and sympathy, but Michael wasn't biting. He'd spent too long trying to salvage a connection that Amanda had willingly dismantled piece by piece. When Amanda arrived, she looked polished but slightly disheveled, her makeup meticulously applied, her outfit carefully chosen, but the strain of the last few hours etched faintly into her features. Her gaze darted around the park before landing on Michael, and she hesitated before walking over. "Michael," she said softly, her voice wavering. "What's going on?" Michael straightened and turned to face her fully, his jaw set. "I thought it would be obvious. We're here to talk about what you've been doing behind my back." Her expression shifted to one of guarded defensiveness, a mask she had perfected. "I told you I made a mistake." I don't know why you're dragging this out in public." Michael scoffed, shaking his head. "Dragging this out? Amanda, I'm trying to give you the opportunity to tell me the truth. All of it. No more half-truths, no more excuses. Just the truth." Amanda's eyes flipped away, a telltale sign of guilt. She crossed her arms, her posture tense. "I already told you the truth, Michael. I was lonely. Things between us haven't been great." Michael's anger flared, but he forced himself to remain composed. "So your solution was to run to someone else, to James?" He emphasized the name, watching as Amanda flinched. "If things weren't great, why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you try to fix it?" "I didn't plan for this to happen," she said, her voice rising. "I didn't wake up one day and decide to betray you, Michael. It just happened." Michael laughed bitterly. "It just happened?" "Amanda, affairs don't just happen. You made a series of choices. Every lie, every time you left the house under false pretenses, every kiss, those were choices." Amanda opened her mouth to argue but closed it again, her face crumpling. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Then help me understand," Michael pressed, his voice firm but not unkind. "Why him? What did James offer you that I didn't?" Amanda hesitated, as though weighing her words. "It wasn't about him. It was about me," she admitted finally. "I felt trapped, like I wasn't myself anymore. James made me feel alive again." Michael stared at her, his heart aching despite his resolve. "So you killed what we had to chase some version of yourself you thought you'd lost? Did you ever think about what this would do to me? To us?" "I didn't think it would go this far," Amanda said, her voice breaking. "I thought I could stop before it got serious." "But you didn't," Michael said, his tone cutting. "You let it go on, Amanda. You let it fester until it was too late, and now here we are." A heavy silence fell between them, broken only by the sound of water splashing in the fountain. Amanda's eyes brimmed with tears, but Michael didn't offer comfort, not this time. "Do you love him?" Michael asked, the question hanging in the air like a blade. Amanda blinked, startled. "I don't know," she said weakly. "I thought I did, but—" "Stop, Michael interrupted. "Don't lie to me again. Either you love him or you don't." She hesitated, then shook her head. "I don't. I love you, Michael. I swear." Michael exhaled sharply, his hands trembling at his sides. "Love doesn't excuse what you've done. Love doesn't make this right." Amanda reached for him, but he stepped back, the distance between them now insurmountable. "Please, Michael, don't throw everything away. We can fix this." Michael's eyes hardened. "You already threw everything away, Amanda. You can't fix what's been destroyed. You made your choices. Now I'm making mine." Amanda's tears spilled over, her sobs echoing in the quiet park. But Michael didn't waver. He turned on his heel and walked away, the weight of his decision heavy but freeing. As he left, he felt the first glimmer of clarity, a sense that, while this chapter was ending in betrayal, the next could begin with strength. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. This was Amanda's burden to bear now. And Michael was finally ready to start anew. Michael sat on the edge of the bed in the guest room, his mind spinning. The events of the last few days had been a whirlwind of raw emotions and life-altering decisions. It had been 3 days since his confrontation with Amanda at the park. 3 days since he told her their relationship was over. Now, as he stared at the wall, he grappled with the aftermath of his choice. Downstairs, he could hear Amanda moving around. The familiarity of her presence, once comforting, now felt suffocating. Though they still shared the same house temporarily, the emotional chasm between them was unbridgeable. Michael had moved into the guest room, a silent declaration that their shared life was over. Amanda's attempts to talk had grown increasingly desperate, her pleas oscillating between anger and sorrow. But Michael had made his decision. He wasn't interested in arguments or half-hearted apologies anymore. What he needed now was peace, and that wasn't something Amanda could offer. That afternoon, Michael decided to clear his head with a walk. The crisp autumn air was refreshing, a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere at home. Leaves crunched under his feet as he wandered aimlessly through the neighborhood, memories of happier times flashing unbidden in his mind. He passed the coffee shop where he and Amanda used to meet before they were married, back when life felt simple and full of promise. He remembered how she used to light up at the sight of him, her laughter carrying through the air like music. How had they gone from that to this? Michael shook his head, trying to dispel the wave of nostalgia. It wasn't just Amanda's actions that had brought them here. Their marriage had been fraying for a long time. Her betrayal had merely torn apart what was already fragile. It was a painful truth, but one Michael knew he needed to confront if he wanted to heal. As he rounded the corner toward the park, he saw James sitting on a bench, looking as composed and arrogant as ever. Michael froze, anger rising unbidden at the sight of the man who had played such a central role in his heartbreak. James spotted him and raised a hand in a mock greeting, a smug smile spreading across his face. Michael's fists clenched, his instinct urging him to confront James then and there, but he held back, refusing to give James the satisfaction of seeing him lose control. Instead, he turned and walked away, the weight of James's mocking smile lingering with every step. He couldn't control James's actions, but he could control his response. And right now, James didn't deserve another second of his energy. Later that evening, Michael sat at the dining table with a glass of whiskey in hand, his phone lighting up with notifications. Friends and family had begun reaching out. Amanda, it seemed, had told a few people about the situation. Some messages were supportive, while others were cautious inquiries tinged with curiosity and disbelief. One message caught his attention, a text from his sister, Emily. "Heard what happened. I'm here if you need me. Remember, you don't have to go through this alone." Michael stared at the message for a moment before typing out a response. "Thanks, Em. It's been rough, but I'll get through it. Maybe we can catch up soon." He hit send and set the phone down, appreciating the simple comfort of knowing someone was in his corner. For the first time in days, he felt a glimmer of hope, a reminder that his life wasn't entirely defined by Amanda's betrayal. The next morning, Michael woke with a new sense of purpose. He had decided it was time to start planning for the future. A future without Amanda. He spent hours researching lawyers and gathering the necessary paperwork for a divorce. Each click of the mouse, each document saved, felt like another step toward reclaiming his life. When Amanda appeared in the doorway, her eyes red from crying, Michael steeled himself. "Michael, can we talk?" she asked, her voice cracking. He sighed but nodded, gesturing for her to sit. Amanda took a seat across from him, fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. "You know I've hurt you," she began, her voice trembling. "And I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I don't want this to end like this. I don't want us to throw everything away." Michael met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "Amanda, it already ended the moment you chose to betray me. I can't trust you anymore. And without trust, there's nothing left." Tears streamed down her face, but Michael remained resolute. "I've started the process for a divorce," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I think it's best for both of us to move on." Amanda broke down, her sobs echoing through the room, but Michael didn't waver. He had mourned their relationship enough, and now it was time to let it go. That evening, Michael stood in the backyard gazing at the stars. The weight of his decision was heavy, but he felt a sense of relief. The path ahead would be difficult, but it was his path, free from the lies and deception that had plagued his marriage. As the cool night air brushed against his skin, Michael resolved to take life one day at a time. The fallout from Amanda's betrayal was far from over, but he was ready to face it head on. For the first time in weeks, he felt a sliver of peace, a reminder that, even in the midst of heartbreak, there was hope for a new beginning. The morning sun streamed through the curtains, casting soft golden light across Michael's face. He stirred in bed, the guest bed that had become his new refuge, and for the first time in weeks, he felt a faint but genuine sense of calm. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was something close to acceptance. His decision to leave Amanda and end their marriage had not been made lightly, but now that the wheels were in motion, the oppressive weight of betrayal seemed to lift piece by piece. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was his own to navigate. By mid-morning, Michael was back at his laptop, finalizing the details of his divorce filing. He scrolled through a checklist he had compiled: financial records, joint account statements, and property documents. Each step toward legal closure felt like reclaiming a piece of himself. He had spent years building a life with Amanda, but now he would focus on building one for himself. As he worked, an email notification pinged. It was from a long-forgotten acquaintance, someone who had heard about his situation through mutual friends. The subject line read, "Thinking of you." The message was brief but kind, offering support and sharing a similar story of betrayal. Michael read it twice, his chest tightening. While he didn't yet feel ready to share his own pain in depth, it was comforting to know that he wasn't alone, that others had survived this and found ways to rebuild. He drafted a quick response. "Thanks for reaching out. It means a lot. Let's catch up soon." Later that afternoon, Michael found himself standing outside a community center in town. It was a place he had passed countless times but had never considered entering. A sign near the door caught his eye. Support group for those navigating betrayal and divorce. He hesitated, his hand hovering near the door handle. The idea of sharing his story with strangers felt foreign, even daunting. But the thought of spending another evening alone, replaying the same memories and doubts, felt worse. The meeting was small, just a circle of 7 people seated in folding chairs. Michael listened as each participant shared their journey, stories of heartbreak, resilience, and eventual healing. When it was his turn to speak, he took a deep breath. "My name's Michael," he began, his voice steady but quiet. "And I'm here because my wife cheated on me. I'm trying to figure out what comes next." The words hung in the air, raw and unpolished, but they felt freeing. For the first time, he didn't feel the need to mask his pain or pretend he was okay. And the nods of understanding from the group reminded him that his feelings were valid, his journey shared by others who had walked similar paths. That evening, Michael returned home with a folder of resources and a renewed sense of possibility. He set it on the kitchen counter, glancing around the space that had once been a shared sanctuary. Now, it felt like a relic of a life he was leaving behind. He resolved to make changes, not just legally, but emotionally and physically. A fresh coat of paint, new furniture, maybe even a new home altogether. As he stared at the empty countertop, a thought struck him. He had spent so much energy dissecting the past, dwelling on Amanda's betrayal, that he hadn't allowed himself to dream of the future. What did he want? Who did he want to be? The next day, Michael decided to visit a local hiking trail he had always meant to explore but had never found the time for. The forest was quiet, save for the rustle of leaves and the distant chirping of birds. As he walked, he thought about his life, what had gone wrong, what he could change, and what he could embrace moving forward. There, in the middle of the trail, he made a simple vow to choose himself. He would no longer define his worth by his relationship with Amanda or by the pain she had caused. Instead, he would rebuild step by step, choice by choice. That evening, Michael sat at his desk and drafted a personal manifesto. It wasn't anything formal or grand, just a series of promises to himself. To prioritize honesty and trust, starting with himself, to explore passions and interests he had set aside, to welcome new connections while learning from the past, to embrace the idea that endings are also beginnings. As he wrote, a sense of purpose began to form. The pain Amanda had caused was real, but it didn't have to define him. He could take that pain and transform it into strength, into a foundation for the life he deserved. The next week, Michael contacted a real estate agent to explore new housing options. He started taking morning jogs, rediscovering the simple joy of movement and solitude. He even signed up for a photography class, something he had always wanted to try but had never made time for. Each step, no matter how small, felt like a victory. By the time he packed his first box to move out of the house he had shared with Amanda, Michael felt lighter. The house had been a home once, but now it was a place of memories he no longer wanted to carry. His new chapter was just beginning, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like his alone.